interviewed Daniel Rothschild, and you may know him from the debates that I've had. He was the moderator, and he is an avid YouTube user and has been posing a lot of questions and arguments in this anarchist debate that I've been having with many people. So welcome to the bottom line, Daniel.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on.
Okay, so first I'd like to get an idea of what you think will be the situation under anarchist scenario. If we dismantle the U.S. government in all of its variations, do you think there still would be criminals, murderers, robbers, extortionists,
Sure.
and as well as foreign criminals or tyrants like Kim Jong-il or Fidel Castro or maybe even Putin or the Communist China?
Well, I don't think you're ever going to eliminate all murder. I mean, that would be nice, but I'm not a utopian. I don't think that's realistic. There are always going to be people who erroneously violate other people's rights, and there will always be a murder. I think the best society is one where it's reduced, and I would like to eliminate it, but I think we'll always have poverty on some level. People will always die, and there will always be some human beings who do decide to violate other people's rights, whether it's theft, fraud, rape, or kill. I don't think you're ever going to eliminate
Make sure I got so if we dismantle the U.S. government now, we would still have all the criminals that we have right now, right? They
I'm not saying we would have as. I don't think we'd have as much.
Well, you might, but immediately they would still be there. They're criminals. They wouldn't change their mind because there's no government immediately.
Well, yes, that's true, but government also creates.
That's the scenario I'm going to deal with. So we still have to deal with the fact that in our society we have, I don't know, 2 or 3% people that are outright criminals, such as the kind I mentioned before.
Right.
And we have in the world, we have tyrants which are prepared to do predatory strategies and invade countries and whatever, right? So they're not going to disappear either, right? If we.
But government creates a lot of criminals too. Government creates.
I just want to make sure that you don't think. But do you think that if we dismantle the government right now, that all these tyrants will resign and then they're?
No, I never said that.
Okay, so that's the point. That's all I want to know. So this is a situation we have to deal with. Okay. Would some, but not all people, seek protection under security agencies?
Sure.
Okay. Would there be a range of security agencies in number? So previously you had said that you thought there might be, you wouldn't know exactly how many, but you thought that it was reasonable to assume that there would be either hundreds or thousands.
Sure. I don't know how much they would be, obviously. I can't predict the future. It would be... Look, if someone were to say to me, how many shoe stores are there going to be? I have no way of knowing that answer. How many supermarkets are there?
There would be a range, and reasonable to assume that there would be either hundreds or thousands of security agencies.
Sure.
Okay.
Probably hundreds. I don't know about thousands, but sure.
Well, okay. Well, would some of these security agencies have nuclear weapons?
I can't predict the future. I mean, probably not, because I think very few people would want to sign up with a security agency that there's this big a threat. I mean, one of the things that you talk about is, well, there'll be a dispute, and two security agencies will...
I'm going to get into that in a second. So let's save you your answer when I ask you the question. So you think not that they wouldn't have nuclear weapons, but would they have conventional weapons sufficient to invade another country, and like armies, air force, navies, sufficient to invade, like in the... just a second, just so you get... in the block debate, I posed a scenario of Kim Jong-il attacking Honolulu, and he said that he thought first, in the one scenario, they would just have to pay the extortion note, and then in the second scenario, he said, well, they would have sufficient conventional weapons to deter that attack. So that means they would have like the equivalent of a U.S. government, Army, Air Force, and Navy.
Well, King Jamil is an example of a government, so I wouldn't use him as an example of a protection agency.
No, I mean, we're not on. What I'm saying is that if he sent an extortion note, which was the originally, Dr. Block said.
But look, under a government, you have uniform monopolization of law. So if you decide to invade a government, you take over its tax base and you impose law. But if you have, vigilante justice and a polycentric legal system, you're going to have to not invade just the government. You're going to have to attack every citizen.
No, but I'm just.
And that is a highly risky and highly unlikely to occur. Look.
Yeah, do you know what the question is?
Yes, the question is, suppose.
No, the question is very simple.
To invade an anarchist society.
No. The question is, that was what we discussed with Block. The question is, would some of these security agencies have sufficient conventional weapons? You said they wouldn't have nuclear weapons, but they would have sufficient conventional weapons to deter a threat.
Well, first of all, I never said they wouldn't have nuclear
somebody
weapons.
Like North Korea. Well, let me finish just the question.
Sorry.
A threat like North Korea, where they would be able to have navies and armies and air forces to attack that country if they sent an extortion note like I had discussed in the debate. Well, would they have that kind of military hardware and armies?
I'm not a fortune teller, and I'm not so presumptuous that I can tell you what type of hardware they're going to have. I can make predictions, and I think it's unlikely that you would have nuclear weapons because that's very risky. But I can't guarantee anything. Just like no one can guarantee anything. You can't guarantee that a government will stay limited. You can't guarantee that a government won't invade and become a totalitarian state. I can't predict the future.
I got your answer. You don't know whether they would have conventional weapons. So I hope we'll be able to examine both possibilities, when they have them and when they don't. So because you don't know which would probably be the case. Would some security agencies offer a service of defending your rights regardless? If they thought you were right and being a victim or being accused of being a criminal when you weren't, and they would defend your rights if they were convinced of that, regardless of whether some other jurisdiction disagree. Not go to. I understand that you think most of them would have an agreement to go to arbitration, but would some say, look, I'm going to offer you a different service. In our security agency, we will have a trial, and depending on what we decide is the case, we will back it up with force. So we will not let anybody yank you to jail because of some other jurisdiction conclusion about whether you're right or wrong in a situation. Would some security agencies offer that plan, which I would think would be a more expensive plan, because the other security agencies, as I understand it, would just send it to the arbitration, and then they just give you up if the arbitration.
Well, I mean, it's possible. I'm not really sure what this has to do with anarchy or the ethics of government, or it's possible. You're asking me to paint what a society in the future is going to look like, and no one can do that.
Okay, so, but it wouldn't be illegal for there to be agencies of that sort which offer that kind of protection plan.
No, I don't. I would not if they limit themselves to defense. No, I suppose not.
Okay. So let's talk about the situation that I've claimed that anarchism would lead to an exponential increase in crime.
Right.
Disagree. You have agreed. Let me. You have agreed that there would always these criminals. If we dismantle the government, they would be there. So there's going to be some amount of criminals there. Now, my question to you is, right now, if these criminals, not when there is a government, because we have a government right now, if they acquire military hardware like tanks, drones, helicopters, as you notice, none of them have done this. Not a single criminal gang has ever acquired military hardware or made an army or anything here in the United States. Why is it that they do not acquire these military hardware? And what would happen if they did?
Well, first of all, the government themselves, as you know, arms and gives weapons to criminals. They've done it Fast and Furious. They've done it with plenty of other dictators. So the government themselves give weapons to criminals.
Okay. So are there some criminal gangs now that have tanks, attack helicopters, drones, guided missiles?
Most people are not criminals. So
no, are there any criminal gangs that you're aware of right now that have this kind of military hardware that I just described?
No, but look, there is a
So my question is why? Why don't they have it?
There is a Calvin and Hobbes cartoon, which I think speaks a lot of truth, and a bully is picking on Calvin, and he says to the bully, "Why don't you pick on someone your own size?" And the bully says, "Because they fight back." People generally attack people who are weaker than them. Most people are not criminals. So even if some of these criminals were able to obtain weaponry, they will be vastly outnumbered by other people who are also able to obtain weaponry, and therefore they're not really much of a threat. Look, you brought up a case of suppose two defense agencies have a dispute and they decide to engage in war. Well, let me ask you a question for a second. Suppose two...
I haven't answered mine.
Hold on.
Why they don't have it?
So hold on. Suppose you have two possible scenarios. One, where you go to a war and you have to fight in a war and risk your own life and limbs, or you can pay someone else to fight in your stead with other people's money. The costs are socialized. Taxpayer dollars versus scenario B, where you don't have to risk your limbs. You can either draft someone against their will to fight in your war, or you could pay them with taxpayer money. That's one scenario. And another scenario is where you have to fight and risk your own life or pay people to fight in your stead with your own money. Out of those two scenarios, who is more likely to go to war? One who's going to risk his own life to go to war or pay people with his own money, or another person who can send other people to go fight in his stead and pay them and bribe them with taxpayer dollars. It's sort of like victimless crime laws. Imagine.
You're not answering you haven't answered my question, and instead do you think you can answer a question with another question? Is that you think that's a legitimate way to answer a question?
Well, I am Jewish. Look,
because I mean. That's just a way of evading a question.
I'm not evading.
There's a reason why the criminals the mafia doesn't have tanks and helicopters and jets and anything.
Yes.
Because it's a big expense which doesn't get them anything. In fact, if they ever did it, the U.S. government would see them and go to war with them and eliminate them. That's a sure death sentence.
Okay.
Isn't that true?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the point. The point is, right now, extra military hardware does not help them increase their pool of likely victims. A few AK-7s, 47s, or whatever they are, and guns is sufficient. And when they see the cops, they have to run. They have to run because they are weaker by a million times. So they don't even try to get military hardware under this situation that we're in now. And we know that to be a fact. We know that to be a fact because none of them have it. Not a single gang that you know of, and that's what I asked you. none of them have it, and it's very simple why. Because
so what you're saying, Jan, is that
increases the risk of being attacked by the government and doesn't increase their potential pool of victims. That's the situation right now.
So what you're saying, Jan, is that the government is able to stop all violent dissenters. Is that correct?
No, what I'm saying is that they do not have an incentive to get military hardware. Like I just said, tanks. Are any of them have tanks?
Who's just going to give someone a tank if they think they're going to cause great destruction with it? Under anarchy, they won't have incentives to do it either, because the protection agency will say, you commit acts of aggression, we're going to come and
no, they haven't committed any acts of aggression. They're just buying a tank.
Okay,
right now they don't have tanks. They don't have tanks or military hardware. They don't have little armies, because if they had one, they would be wiped out by the government. That's the situation that they're in right now. That's why you don't know any and can't mention a single gang that has military hardware here in the United States. It only makes their life worse.
Right, but
it doesn't increase
potential for predation.
Okay, so that's the only point that okay, now the question is, when there is no government,
right,
do they have an incentive to get military hardware? Because now there is no government that's going to attack them. It's perfectly legal for them to get military hardware, and they can increase their pool of victims.
No,
so,
look.
They don't increase their pool of victims now?
No, they don't.
Under anarchism, would they increase their pool of victims?
No.
They would not.
No, and I'll explain why.
Okay, so
I'll explain why.
Anarchism, okay, well, I want to understand. So under anarchism, having a few tanks and military attack helicopters, drones, doesn't mean that you can extort money and threaten more people than you could before with just your...
Well, you could do that under government. Government extorts money from everyone. The only people robbing from me are the state. No one else takes 40% of people's paychecks from pretty much everyone. It's government which extorts people. It's called April 15th.
So you say, but I'm asking you a simple question about incentives, and you're studying economics. Do they have...
No,
they don't. They don't have any...
Look,
being more powerful doesn't give them an edge.
But no, look, suppose there is an agent, suppose there is a DRO, and the DRO basically says, it's sort of like a protection racket. The DRO basically says, unless you give us money to defend you, we are going to use our guns on you. Well, if they're the only DRO, we're sort of fucked, and we have to listen to them. But if there are other DROs, I just go to other DROs, and I say, hey, this DRO is threatening me. Protect me against these goons. So these criminals that you're afraid of, I simply go to DROs, and I say, look, these people are threatening me with violence. Protect me against them. Just like you would call, let's say the cop.
And some people would do that, and when you agreed that some people would not be organized, would not have any security agency, and some security agencies would be weaker than that criminal gang because they don't have a military hardware, and they would have to accede to the threat. That's the point.
Well, if you don't buy flood insurance, your home gets flooded. Okay. What can I tell you?
Okay, so in your scenario, they would go, but what I'm saying is that some people would not have security agencies, right, or no?
That's their choice.
There would be some, and those people that have no security agency, whatever guns or shotguns they had would be useless against a militarized criminal gang, correct?
Jan, you have not.
What I'm trying to show you is something obvious, that when under this situation now, then there's no incentive for them to get military hardware. If there is no government, the whole thing changes, because there is this incentive, because they can pick off the weaklings, the individuals and the security agencies that are not well armed.
Jan, you have not made yet a principled argument for the state. Look,
I'm not making any arguments. I'm asking you questions about what the scenario is.
If you talk to statists of any stripe, all of them will paint horror stories of what's going to happen unless you allow them to violate some rights. Oh, if you don't allow the welfare state, old people are going to be eating cat food, and there's going to be starving to death.
Okay, so I just want to get
if you don't have the welfare state, people are going to go into people's houses and rob them. So please let us take your money. You haven't made.
In your view, there is no greater incentive for them to have. Okay, in your view, there's no greater incentive for them to have military hardware under anarchism. And even though it's obvious that their pool of potential victims would be greater, and they could extort more people.
It wouldn't, because they have protection agencies that say, this guy's trying to extort me, protect me.
Some do, and some don't. Okay, well, let's take that example. Okay.
And what happens if you call the cops and they don't show up? What happens if you call the cops?
What if you're, so you have a security, you rush to a security agency and you say, hey, this guy is trying to extort me, right? Now, what if that security agency has less firepower than the criminal gang? Will they defend you?
Well, let's say one country and one government.
You don't want to answer that question.
I am answering the question. You face the same thing under a state. Let's say one government gets threatened by another government and doesn't have.
We don't have that problem here in the United States. There's no government that can threaten us.
Us, but how about other governments? Fuck them. They don't count.
That's their problem.
Oh, you're right.
My problem is
I'm asking everyone but the U.S.
Listen, I'm asking you about if you're in favor of dismantling the government here in the United States right now.
I'm in favor of dismantling all governments. I don't hate America.
You don't have any. You're not a citizen of the other countries. You can't. That's their problem. I'm asking you: are you in favor of dismantling the government? All the governments of the United States right now. Are you in favor of that or not?
I'm in favor of dismantling any government, any country, anywhere.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, since you're in favor of it, I'm trying to go through what are the obvious consequences.
The consequences are no different under a state. Under a government, you have not defended your view morally, and you haven't shown how under a government.
I'm asking you questions. I'm not making a presentation. If you want, I can make a presentation and defend it morally if you want. But that's not. I'm interviewing you. If you want, I'm asking you questions, and I'm trying to get a straight answer on some of these.
And my answer is the same answer.
I can see why you're willing to do this interview, because you don't want to answer questions. You want to ask me questions. You want to argue. You want to accuse me of this or that or the other. That's what you really want to do.
My question is:
are you going to answer these questions or not? Because I got a lot of questions.
My answer is:
what is the question you're answering right now?
Suppose there is a defense agency weaker than a bully who wants to attack you.
Right.
Okay, so there's always going to be someone possibly stronger than you who wants to attack you. Whether you have a government, whether you have anarchy, there are always going to be people who are stronger than you that want to attack you. There's always, and having a government doesn't get rid of that problem. Having a government. In that case,
you just give in. What if one or the other miscalculate? So the criminal gang that is militarized thinks that they can overpower this security agency and the security agency thinks, no, they can't. We can beat them in a war.
Right.
What happens then?
Well, what happens if two countries decide to go to war? You haven't solved the issue by having a government.
Absolutely, and we don't have to worry about that because there isn't any country that can go to war with us and survive. So that's irrelevant for us. What I'm talking about is us. Here in the United States, you said you want to dismantle the government, and I'm asking you if that security agency says, no, we can take these guys down, know about it, and the criminal gang thinks, no, they're under-militarized, we could take them. What happens? Is there not a civil war? They have a little war.
No, there's not a civil war.
In your neighborhood.
There's not a civil war.
You have a war right here in the United States.
Nonsense. War is very expensive. The reason government goes to war is for two few reasons. One, the money is
calculate.
So they don't have to. Look, Obama isn't fighting in the war. He's sending.
The criminal gang thinks that they can prevail and that the other guy will surrender, but they don't. They miscalculate.
The reason
you have a civil war here in the United States.
The reason government goes to war is because I'm explaining why government goes to war, which is relevant. War is the health of the state, as Randolph Board said. The reason government goes to war is because under a crisis, government expands in power. When people are afraid, they're more apt to surrender their liberties. Government has incentives to go to war. It is a bad business move to go to war. It's very, very expensive. And if you're a profit agency, it's not in your interest to go to war. People have disputes all the time. Even governments don't go to war every time there's a dispute.
Will there be any miscalculations between the criminal gangs and weaker security agencies or individuals that they think they don't have an army?
You're saying, what you are saying to me
will there or not? That's the question.
What you are saying to me is it possible that under anarchy, not every people will die and not everything will be roses? Yeah.
No, what I'm saying, what I'm showing you is,
any society.
If you will answer my questions, what I will show you is, through any number of avenues, you end up in civil war, gang warfare.
You don't, because it's a bad business.
Not in Lebanon, not in Syria, right there in New York City and in every city in the United States. And that's why people hate anarchy and will not take it for anything, even for free. But let me ask you the questions that will lead you to that conclusion, or not, if you just give me a clear answer.
I am giving you a clear answer.
Now, so let's say one of these criminal gangs overpowers an agency that didn't have enough firepower and beats him in one of those little wars.
Mm-hmm.
Will the other agencies say, "My goodness, we need to get more military hardware"?
Yeah, and
they will.
And one government decides to overthrow another government, and now they say we have to build up our military hardware.
And that will create an arms race in our country between various security agencies and these criminal gangs that are militarized, which now there isn't a single criminal gang militarized, and I've explained to you why through my questions. But anyway,
I think it's very interesting that you're not defending government, because government is.
I believe in limited government,
right?
And I believe in all, and I don't think that any of those predatory wars are correct, and it's not under limited government self-interest to have wars, and so but the point is that there are tyrants out there which you agree would not evaporate as soon as you dismantle the U.S. government. So my question to you is, when Kim Jong-il, like I asked Dr. Block, you heard the question,
yes,
sends a little extortion note, and to Honolulu, either give us $10 billion or we will nuke you.
Right.
What would they do?
Well,
what do you recommend they do?
Well, I recommend when the government sends you an extortion note and say, give us 50% of your income or into the cage you go, probably a good idea to give in. But that's exactly what the government does. The government sends you an extortion note.
Okay.
They're called taxes, and they say, if you don't pay us money, we will send you into the cage where you will be raped.
Your answer is pay up, right? Your answer is just pay up, right?
Well, if you can defend yourself, defend yourself. Otherwise, you have to analyze them.
You said that you didn't have the defense to do it. You say just pay up. Okay. So if you do that, then you will incentivize every tyrant in the world to send more extortion notes every part of the United States, and soon deplete every bit of wealth that we have been able to accumulate under a limited government,
well, first of all,
even under the transition of a welfare state.
Well, first of all, we don't have a limited government.
Well, it has transitioned away from the original concept.
Well, let me ask you a question, please.
That's true.
Let me ask you a question.
Oh, but I'm going to let you ask me questions. But after I finish asking you questions, because or else it's just like.
I promise I will answer all of your questions.
Okay, so your answer is pay up, and will there be an incentive if
my answer isn't
the Honolulu pays up?
My answer is not pay up. My answer is it is up to you to decide what to do.
Oh, okay.
You analyze these things. Do you give in, or do you pay up, or do you fight? And that's for the individual to decide for himself.
Right. Okay, but you said there's just two possibilities. Either they don't have the wherewithal, in which case you recommended them paying up, right?
Yes. I was beaten up.
And the other possibility is that they do have the wherewithal. In other words, nukes, which you said they wouldn't have.
I didn't say they wouldn't have it. I specifically said I can't predict the future. I don't know what they would have.
Well, okay. Well, either they have. The other possibility is that they have nukes and/or conventional weapons sufficient to deter a country like North Korea. So that means that these security agencies have armies, navies, and air forces where they can invade another country, like we tried to do in the Korean War, and the U.S. Army was even unable, with all of its might, the superpower after the Civil War.
What do you mean? I thought
was unable to overtake North Korea in spite of all the power that they had.
Right. Even government was not able to
succeed. But in other words, I'm just trying to show you. The point is how much military hardware and armies these security agencies would have to have in order to deter that threat. It would be equivalent to all the power that the United States Army and Navy and Air Force have today. Then they could, if they had that amount of hardware, right? Then they would say, okay, if you're extorting money from Honolulu, XYZ security agencies are going to attack you if you nukes Honolulu, right? Okay, now so so that's scenario 2, where scenario 2 is yes, you have all these security agencies have armies, navies, air forces, conventional weapons like the U.S. Army, and you have hundreds, if not thousands, of these agencies. Now, my question to you is, and you heard this question before, what happens when there is a dispute between two of these agencies that have armies?
Yeah.
And one of them decides, I'm not going to wait for the other guy to attack me. I'm going to enforce my view because he happens to be a neocon. And as you know, we got plenty of neocons in our country. So wouldn't be unlikely that one of these neocons believes in preemption.
Well,
just like we did in Iraq.
It's very easy.
We would preempt the other, and then what would we have? A civil war.
It's very easy.
In other words, you would have a destroyed nation. If you just had one of these, one dispute where one agency decides to enforce their view and attack first, the United States would be destroyed. That's it. The whole ball game's over right there.
Well, I don't.
So much for your individual rights and everything. Who cares about the
I mean, you're basically asking. You're basically saying, look, suppose that these companies act irrationally.
No, irrationally. Are there people that will say, I'm going to enforce my view because I know I'm right,
Jan,
and I can't trust the other guy. I can't trust the other guy because I believe in preemption. Are there people in this country that believe in preemption?
Jan.
Are there people in this country that believe in preemption?
Jan, let me answer your question. It's very easy to be a neocon when you're not fighting in the war. It's very easy to support a war on drugs if the costs are socialized to everyone. If they took a poll and they said, okay, raise your hand if you want narcotics to be illegal, and the only people who keep their hands up.
You want to discuss policies that I'm against?
A lot of dads are going to go
I'm
down.
against
So it's very easy to believe in preemption if you're not the one risking your life and fighting it. People are very generous.
Well, look, it might surprise you, Daniel. It might surprise you, but I'm totally in favor of having the generals go to the front, just like Alexander the Great did. And if he thinks it's worth fighting, to fight it with his own goddamn.
You're froze. Jan? You froze for a minute. Yeah, can you come back on?
One of those disagreements, in just one of those disagreements, one of the parties is a neocon and says, I am going to impose my view.
Right.
I'm going to, because this is too important an issue.
Well, if
and he happens to be a neocon, and he believes in preemption, and that's not far-fetched.
So let me make sure I understand
the other agency, and now you have a civil war right here in the United States. Not a little war like we talked about before with the little criminal gang in your neighborhood where he has a few tanks in your streets and everything. No, this is a big war. Covering the whole nation, where people's so whatever is left over of the first security agency that didn't get knocked out, he retaliates, and you got this war, civil war, right here in the United States.
Yeah.
That's a destruction of the United States, and everything we ever had is
Can I speak, please? Dan, if a defense agency is fickle and is saying, look, I'm not going to listen, I'm not going to fulfill my contracts, I'm not going to settle disputes, people are not going to use it. I'm not going to, if I get in a dispute with someone, I'm not going to go to a defense agency that is fickle and is not willing to go to arbitration. They're not going to be in business very long. See,
some people will not want it, but as I said before, some people want their rights to be defended, and they don't trust the other jurisdiction, and they trust the people that will not go to some other agency. And in a free market situation where you have security as a free market, you're going to have all kinds of different contracts for all kinds of different people, and you're going to have the criminal gangs militarized in the mix. And all of these things, when there is a dispute between militarized security agencies and they both want to think they really believe they're right, heartfelt, and they try to grab a guy from the other one to enforce their rule, and the other one tries to stop them, and then it gets out of hand. There starts to be some shooting. One guy is the head of one of these security agencies, is a neocon. He believes in preemption. He says, well, I'm going to knock this other agency out before they attack me. I'm not going to wait, because even though we've had a few scuffles, I don't know where this is going to lead. The point is that these differences of opinion of whether who's right or not, with just one party willing to use force, to start the use of force, ends up in a civil war. That's the obvious thing. That's why people are against anarchism. That's one of the main reasons.
No, I disagree, because again, we're talking about incentives. Government has very little incentive to protect people, and there are a few reasons. One, guaranteed income. I am getting your money whether I protect you and whether I don't. There's no competition. So if I suck, you really have no other option to choose to. So that's why monopolies are bad. Just think of a government as a monopoly. Monopolies are bad because they can offer a very expensive, shoddy product because they don't have to worry about competitors. And government doesn't have to worry about going out of business as much as there are governments who go out of business, thankfully, but not to the degree of markets where there is competition and there's no guaranteed income. That's why taxation is so destructive. I'm guaranteed your money.
Will there be some people that are neocons and believe in preemption that own or direct these security agencies?
Jan, you
answer that,
you believe in limited government.
That's right. You're going to answer my question?
I am going to answer your question, but I'm going to be long-winded. How do you propose people get to limited government? Do you believe that all we have to do is vote for a messiah who's going to come and limit the state? Well, that's completely unrealistic. The only possible way we can have a limited government is if the majority of the population is of the mindset of, I want a limited government. Do you agree that the only way we can have a limited government is if the majority of the population wants there to be a limited government?
Yes, I agree.
Great.
See how easy it is to
answer? The only way we can have anarchy is if the majority of the population agrees with anarchy, which means that the majority of the population agrees with the anarchist principles. That's the only way.
It doesn't matter. Just a 30% or 20% of people that are willing not to go to arbitration, that want to enforce their view, that are or are neocons that believe in preemption, will be enough to have a civil war. And you promised to answer my question, and you didn't. I said,
Sorry, you froze. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, do you remember the question? Because I asked you a straightforward question.
Say it again.
I knew it. Will there be any heads of security agencies that believe in preemption, like neocons? Because the country is full of neocons.
It's possible. I mean, you're asking me.
So all you need is one of them to do a preemptive strike, and the whole United States.
No, you don't need one, and all you need is a sociopath in government to take over the reins, and then you become a totalitarian dictatorship.
It's never happened, and there's a good reason why. You haven't figured it out yet, but that's a different discussion.
What? There aren't totalitarian.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. We've talked about the tyrants and how if you have militarized security agencies to the teeth, well, then that just means it increases your risk of a civil war when the disagreement is internal. But let's talk about the other part, which is the decent, responsible citizens that are not criminals. They want to get along with everyone and respect everybody's rights and everything. Okay, right now, these citizens are extremely litigious, right? We are having differences of opinion and conflicts in civil courts all over the place about all sorts of things, and in the criminal courts as well, right? Well,
sure.
So we have now. My question to you is: we have all this hundreds of thousands of disagreements and disputes when everybody agrees what the law is, what it says. It's in a code, and it says these words. Now, will there be more disagreements if there is an agreement on what the law is? So some people believe in Sharia law. Other people believe in Virginia law, common law, Napoleonic code law, Texas law, whatever.
There will
and every other variation of everybody's imagination of what the law should be or shouldn't be. Will there be more disagreements?
Yes, there's not going to be, even among a lot of libertarians, there are disagreements. Even a lot among anarchists, there are disagreements, you know.
Right. There will be more disagreements than now, right? Okay.
Yes.
But if a very small percentage, even a fraction
disagreements are a good thing. It means people are thinking.
Right. If a very small fraction of 1% even decide that they are right and they're going to enforce their view and use force against the other citizen or the other security agency, whatever is the situation, will then that other security agency or citizen retaliate, and will that create a little war?
I mean, look, you have wars between governments. It's possible that there'll be some wars.
This is not a problem for us. Here, we live comfortably, even though we have gone to war incorrectly.
Well, let's say there's a bunch of governments who really hate America, and they team up and they decide to gain.
And that's not possible. Right now, that's the whole point that you're missing. I've said it 100 times. We are safe because we don't need any allies for anything. Nobody can attack us, because if they do, it's a death sentence on themselves, and that's why they don't. So all this neocon stuff about countries and we allies and all that is worthless and foolish, and it has no basis.
I agree, and I think
the truth is that nobody will attack us, and so we don't have to worry about that under a limited government. But under an anarchist government, we do have to worry about the fact that every little dispute has the potential to become a little war. Okay. Even when the people are not criminals. That's obvious.
Fine.
And
Can I ask you a question, please?
You agreed if you not even agreed on what the law is, the amount of disagreements increases exponentially.
Okay.
So
we have disagreements. I'm not punching you.
So then all you have to have is a few of these people to disagree and go to war with each other, and then their families allied together to fight the other. They draw in other people. There's collateral damage, and you have a war in your neighborhood, not in some other country where you can watch it on TV.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
There are 200 governments, roughly. Out of the 200 that exists currently, 2014, how many of them subscribe to your limited government?
Well, I don't think any of them subscribe completely to my view of limited government. The United States and maybe a few others, I'm not a scholar to know exactly how much liberty or freedom there is in other countries. I hear that things have changed and that some countries have progressed to some degree, but even the United States, when it started, it wasn't perfectly limited. It's a matter of degree, and that's something that apparently none of the anarchists seem to understand, which is you're saying it's either a limited government or it isn't. Well, no, there's various degrees of closeness to the optimal model, and it makes a big difference in your lifestyle.
Are we at that model? Are we at that optimal model?
How you can live and how you can live, and there's a big difference between having gang warfare in your neighborhood or not having it, having tanks in the streets or not having them.
So are we at that optimal model?
No, we aren't.
Fine. Absolutely. So what makes you think it's possible? What makes you? I just asked you, out of the 200 countries that exist, name one, just one out of 200 that subscribe to a limited government, and your answer, there are zero. Zero governments that exist currently are limited to protecting individual rights. You just admitted that 100% of the governments violates the individual rights in some degree. So what makes you think that limited government is not an oxymoron and that it's a protector? As you know,
okay, so I'm going to answer different than you.
As you know, contrary views
cannot answer the question or not.
I will in 1 second. Let me just finish. As you know, something can not be both A and not A. Contradictions are not true. So either government is a protector or it is an aggressor. It can't be both.
No, actually, you're wrong. Governments in some instances can be protectors or in others aggressors, and there's various degrees of aggression, and apparently you haven't followed that. That's, I think, is one of the reasons why there's so many people that are anarchists. They don't see a difference in degree, and they don't see how it affects their personal life at the moment, whether they have a civil war or not, or gang warfare or not. So, yeah, it makes a big difference.
Genocide.
Now, I'm going to answer. You want me to answer your question? You say so. It's your thesis that limited government is not possible because there isn't any government right now that is really close to the optimum model of limited government. So that means it's not possible?
I don't think it's
your view?
That's not why. My view is that limited government
is that your? Yeah, I thought that was your point.
Yes, limited government is not possible. That is my view.
Right, because if you look at the world, you see that there isn't any government that is really close to the optimum of limited government. All of them have deviated. The United States, to some degree, also has deviated, and other countries have deviated more or less or whatever. That's your point, right? So since there aren't any that are absolutely limited, then it's not possible. That's your view?
My view is that it's not, there's no such thing as...
Not possible because there aren't any in the world that are completely limited, right?
The reason it's not possible...
You don't want to answer that question.
I am answering it. The reason limited government is not possible is what you hinted at before. You basically said the these criminals are not able to own sufficient weaponry is because government is able to prevent all violent dissenters. Well, if government is able to prevent all violent dissenters, how much more so are they able to prevent non-violent dissenters, which means, guess what? You can't limit the state.
Did you answer the question, or that I'm just feeding back to you what you said. You said that it was not possible to have limited government because there weren't any limited governments. That's your view.
That's not why it's not possible.
That's what you said. That's the evidence that it's not possible.
Well, I think that's evidence to show that it doesn't exist. That's not evidence to show that it's not possible. But that's good evidence to show that it doesn't exist. Right? I analyze the government based on how I would like it to behave.
Okay. I indulge you in letting you ask me a question, and then I think that what you were saying is that limited government is not possible because none of the governments in the world, you asked me if any of them were very close to the limited government model, and I agreed that all have deviated to some degree.
Right.
So your argument is it's not possible to have limited government because there aren't any, as I've admitted, that there aren't any that are completely limited.
Right.
Right. And does that argument apply equally to anarchy, which there isn't any, the whole world is divided into countries and there aren't any anarchist social organizations or systems where the whole big territories are officially based on anarchism?
No.
No. Okay. So just because there aren't any doesn't mean that it can't be, right?
No.
Right. Well, that's what I thought. So that's what I thought. So it's all nonsense argument.
No.
Yeah, because you've admitted now that just because there aren't any limited governments now doesn't mean that there can be.
There's a difference.
There can be. Let me answer your question straightforwardly. Obviously, like you said before, and you contradicted yourself, if the people decide that they want limited government, they can have it, and they can have it closer or closer or closer or more closer or less closer to the model, to the optimum model of completely limited government. And so it is possible. So your argument that it's not possible is ridiculous. It's just like saying it's not possible for there to be anarchism. Of course it's possible.
There is a difference.
So that both are possible. And so that's not an issue, but you were trying to pretend that it wasn't possible. Okay.
There is a difference.
Let me continue to ask you the questions since you wanted to discuss all these things. I'm going to ask you the questions because I've discussed already, the fundamental premises of why anarchism leads to civil war and gang warfare and everything, and I don't see any good answer to that. But my question, you want to discuss the ethics of anarchism, and so let's discuss that. So I asked Mr. Block, and you heard, is it ever justified to initiate physical force against someone who hasn't violated anybody's rights?
No.
And just so it's not a trick question, because if I'm talking about a situation of extreme duress, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not trying to, because some people try to ask that question, and they don't want to specify if it's extreme.
Right. I don't think it's justified.
You don't think it's justified.
Right.
Okay, so you would never you would never initiate force if you were dying of thirst and the other person had the well water there and they denied you the right to use it. You would not violate their rights. And
I define justified as meaning I'm allowed to do something and there are no punishments. Justified means, for example, if someone were to say,
I'm asking you if it's morally wrong. Whether you're caught and punished is a different issue.
No, it's not, because we're talking about what the law should be, not what I'm going to do.
I'm not talking about what the law is. I'm talking about what you would do, what you think is right.
What I would do is...
I'm asking you if you think it's morally wrong, if you think it's always morally wrong to initiate physical force against someone, even though if you don't, you're going to die.
So you're asking me if the only way I can have an apple is by stealing someone's, would I do it?
No, I'm not asking that. I'm asking if you're starving and you need to steal the apple in order to live, would you do it?
I would say that if the only way to survive...
But first, before you answer, do you think it's morally wrong to steal the apple to survive or not?
I believe it's morally wrong to steal an apple and not pay the person back for doing so.
Oh, yeah, but they say we don't... That's a forced loan. I agree with you. If you did steal it, you did steal it, you should pay it back later if you can.
Right.
But
so I would steal an apple to survive, and I would pay him back.
Did they agree to sell you the apple?
I would take the punishment. I would say, look, the punishment of stealing an apple is less severe than the punishment of starving to death. So I'm willing to accept whatever punishment you give me, and it's not going to be the death penalty. And if it is, well, I'm starving to death anyway, so I'll gamble that it's not. So I'm asking
you two simple questions, and it has nothing. I've never asked you should it be the law or not be the law or whatever. I'm asking you, the first question is very simple. Do you think it's morally wrong to initiate physical force, such as the example of stealing the apple because you're starving and you violate the other guy's rights? You think that's morally wrong?
I think it's morally wrong to violate other people's property.
You think it's morally wrong and you shouldn't do it under any circumstances? Yes or no?
I answered your question. My answer is that if I were to do it, I owe him restitution. Now,
I didn't ask you if you owed him restitution. I asked you think it's morally wrong.
Yes, I think it's morally wrong.
Okay. So, I asked you then, would you do it if you thought that you would die if you didn't?
Right. And so what are you trying to say? I'm a hypocrite. I'm a hypocrite. What do you want me to say? That doesn't mean that the principle...
Would you do it? I'm asking you a simple question. Yes or no?
That doesn't make murder...
Yes or no? Would you do it or not?
Follow my own moral principle.
We'll get to that later, but the point is, would you do it?
Yes, probably.
Okay. So, good for you, Daniel. I'm happy you'll still be around because you didn't starve. Okay, so you would do something that you think is morally wrong, right?
No, because I would pay him back.
You just said, no. Well, you paid him back, maybe you could, but it's still, you agreed it was morally wrong. So you would do something that you thought was morally wrong, right?
Would you kill someone to survive, Jim? How far are you going to take this? If the only way you can live is by killing someone, would you do it?
I'm trying to get a straight answer from you, and you won't answer. Would you do things that are you think are morally wrong? I'll answer these same questions later if you want to ask them to me.
I mean, at the end of the day, people care about self-preservation, and people, in order to do self-preservation, may very well violate rights that they disagree with. Yes, but that doesn't mean that.
Okay, so you would do something that you think is morally wrong, right?
I'm not following a moral principle.
Okay, so the answer is yes, right? You would do something that you think is morally wrong, right?
Perhaps, yes.
Yes. So okay. So, what is the purpose of a moral principle?
Jim, no matter what I'm going to say, you're going to criticize me. If I say I wouldn't steal an apple, then you're going to criticize me and say, oh, you wouldn't steal an apple to live. that's terrible. You're willing to die. How bad? And if I say, yes, I will steal the apple, you'll say, what? You're a hypocrite. How bad? No matter what I say, I'm going to be screwed. Whether I say yes or whether I say no, I can't win. So
that happens when you're wrong. You know, that's a good.
What I say, you're going to criticize me. Then you painted a scenario where there's no good answer. If I say yes, I'm willing to steal the apple, you criticize me for not following a moral principle. And if I do follow the moral principle consistently, you criticize me for martyring myself or whatever.
So, what I asked you a simple question. That's right. You're in a no way out situation. Either way, there's a flaw in your position, and that should and you don't know the way out. And I'd be happy to explain it to you, but that's not the point. The point is that you are so committed to moral principles, and then you say, but if in a certain kind of situation I would violate these moral principles, you haven't understood really what the purpose of a moral principle is. That's the problem. That's why you can't think your way out of this quandary.
Ayn Rand wrote an article called The Ethics of Emergencies. Murray Rothbard wrote an article called Lifeboat Situations. The point of ethics is to tell you how to act in everyday life, not some abstract scenario which is highly unlikely ever to occur. The only reason you are giving...
That's right. That's absolutely... I agree. The point is that...
But these are not everyday life situations. They're not everyday... In everyday life,
the everyday life situation
is not kill or be killed. Ethics true rights are at no one else's expense. True ethics are not kill or be killed, starve or steal someone else's property. True ethics are not zero.
It's very simple. Daniel, you agreed that you would do things that are morally wrong, so I don't understand even why you are interested.
Right, and if I said things I would do morally right, you would say I'm a martyr.
If you're going to do something that's morally wrong, what's the point? You know, because your ethics are not integrated. That's why you have this contradiction.
Yeah. Do you think it's okay to kill someone else to survive?
What?
Would you murder someone else to survive?
It depends on the situation. I may have to. And I've already gone through this and answered that question.
Right, so you're basically saying it's okay to kill other people for your own...
It depends on the situation.
It's a very selfish view. You're basically saying the most important thing in life...
No. It's under the issue is...
If I have to steal, so be it.
Okay, look, the issue is if I'm going to die, if I don't kill the other person, then depending on the situation, I may find myself in a situation where my life is still worthwhile even after killing them. On the other hand, I may find myself in a situation where
kill someone outside of self-defense.
You want to listen or not? But anyway, the point is, look, the point is that you are willing to do things that you think are morally wrong, but I'm not. I am not. You know why?
I never said I'm willing to.
Why?
Because you've integrated your...
You don't know why? What?
Because you've integrated your ethics.
Because that's absolutely right. I do what is in my self-interest, and you have not. You haven't integrated your ethics, and that's why you're in this philosophic quandary in ethics.
No,
it's obviously
you are not portraying a realistic scenario.
You need to steal the apple in order to survive.
What you are doing
and
is a trolley card experiment. What you are doing is you are providing unrealistic scenarios where there is no good answer.
No, there is a good answer. There is a good answer. I just gave it to you.
Yes, violate other people's rights.
And obviously, I just gave you the answer. And so basically, you haven't understood what the purpose of ethics is or moral principles.
Yes,
what is the purpose? I asked you a simple question which you won't answer. What is the purpose of moral principles?
To tell you how to act in everyday life.
And then, so if you don't do what the moral principle says, you're violating the moral principle. Then it's not fulfilling its function, right?
No, I'm not. No.
It's not fulfilling its function because you disregard what it says you should do and do something else.
No, a principle doesn't act. Humans act.
That's
okay?
right. You disregard what the principle says you should do, and you do something else.
Fine. So all you
there should be a light go up and say, "Gosh, there's something wrong with my principles here, or there's something wrong with me." Before you said you were a hypocrite.
Jan.
Well, so either way you lose also, because either you're a hypocrite and you have a weak self-esteem because you're no good, or your principles are no good. And I'm here to tell you that the problem is your principles. I'm giving you an out. The problem is you haven't identified the right principles.
Yeah, and you're basically saying you should follow moral principles when they're convenient.
No, I'm saying you should follow moral
principles. Under the
principles.
extremely vague, nebulous title, extreme duress, whatever the hell that means. So
I gave you an exact example of what it meant.
What? There's no scenario where the only way to eat is to violate other people's rights. Everyone has their price. I couldn't pay him money. I couldn't say I'll work for you for a year.
Are you saying it's impossible to get lost in the woods and reach a cabin and the guy refused the water?
No deal I can make. Everyone has their price. I'm sure if I say to him, "I'll be your slave,"
are you saying that's impossible? Are you saying that's impossible? Are you saying that's impossible?
It's highly unlikely. If I say to someone,
"It's unlikely, but it's possible."
Give me one apple and I'll work for you unpaid for a month. How many?
It's possible.
No.
But you admit that it's possible.
Well,
okay. So the point is that you don't understand the context of the principle of non-initiation of physical force.
Yes.
Wrong when
you do it. Okay.
What's the context? What's the context?
It is wrong to initiate the use of physical force. Initiate. Force should be used in defense.
What is the context?
The context is it is wrong to violate other people's rights, and it is wrong to throw the first punch. Look, what you're basically admitting.
That's what the principle says. What's the context?
What? Excuse me. What you are, this is called the trolley car experiment. Let me answer, please, and I will tell you. What you are doing is the trolley car experiment. And this was used by people to justify genocide, and you are using it to justify, please let me finish, to justify the violence of the state, right? The trolley car experiment says you can save one person or you can save 5, and those are your only options. Well, better to save 5 than 1. Well, it's better to save 10. Better to save 100 than 10. Better to save 1 million people and kill. Better to save 1 million people and kill 1,000. Better to kill 5 million people to save 10. And this is just done.
And you won't answer my question of what the context is.
Justify aggression.
This question. You want to talk about a trolley car
scenario to basically say, it's okay for you to violate other people's rights. Fine, but it's okay when the government violates other.
That's not what I said, is it? That's not what I said.
So what's the point of these scenarios?
The point is to help you realize that this principle has a context, and you haven't noticed what it is. The context of the principle is you're not under extreme duress. So fine. So apply the principle, and you should apply the principle.
I'm starving. You have a lot of money. I don't.
Look, Daniel, you won't answer the question, and when I try to answer it for you, you won't let me either. So
you can answer questions for other people?
No, you won't answer it. I asked you 5 times what the context was, and you don't have a clue. You just keep repeating the principle. So I'm explaining to you what the context is.
What is the context for don't rape?
The principle. The principle.
What is the context for don't rape? When is the context don't rape? In what situations is it okay to rape?
Boy, you know, the principle that I've explained to you, and I've told you what the context is, and you don't want to know, you don't know what the context is. You want me to answer questions about when it is right to rape, and so really what you want to do is interview me. And so I can, and I've humored you.
Thank you.
To answer a lot of your questions, and it's just a way of evading my questions, so you won't get to the truth.
I answered
you didn't know the answer of what is the context, and I started to explain, and you interrupted me.
What is the context?
So look, if you don't want to answer questions,
what is the context for don't rape? You know it's a silly question. Rape is wrong irrespective of context. When is the context when it's okay to rape? Obviously, moral principle.
Is there any context in which it might be right to rape? There may be.
No, it's nonsense.
Under extreme duress, you have a gun to your head or whatever, then you have to make a choice. And I've tried to explain that to you, but there's no point in doing it because all you want to do is say, oh, Jan Helfer's in favor of raping. This is basically you haven't understood what the context is of the non-initiation of force principle. And that's why I use the example so you can see that it does have a context. I don't even know if you understand what the concept of context means. It means in a particular situation, kind of scenario,
right, this
principle holds. When somebody asks you what the context of something is, you just can't repeat the principle again.
Right.
You have to explain under what circumstance these principles work.
We're okay to commit genocide, and certain contexts it's when okay to kill. I mean murder.
No. So anyway, basically, here's what we have so far. You are willing to do what you think is wrong. So you don't understand what the purpose of a principle is, which is to direct your actions. So you study so much and you try to find out what the right principle is, and then you say, well, I'll violate it anyway. No, I'm giving there's a way. If you just held the principle properly, you wouldn't be in this quandary, but you don't, and that's the purpose of my question.
What does it have to do with government?
What it has to do with government?
Yes, it sounds like deflecting.
Yeah, and so basically, what it has to do with government, you want to know what it has to do with government?
Yes.
Well, the normal circumstance that you were talking about is that there is a government, a limited government is the right kind of government that there should be, and so that's the normal circumstance that there is. And the normal circumstance is that you're not under extreme duress. Under that circumstance that there's a limited government and you're not under extreme duress, then you should not initiate physical force and you should not violate anybody's rights under that context. But if you're under a different context where there is no government, where you are under extreme duress, it may or may not be right. Depends on what the situation is, what the context is. So anyway, so that's what it has to do. Now, you want to know what it has to do? I'm telling you what it has to do with this political theory. And the problem is, you think, and I think Bloch did as well, that the principle of non-initiation of physical force is the starting point in ethics. Why is it good not to initiate physical force? Why is that good?
Because it's destructive. It is destructive to man.
Of what?
Well, it's destructive to mankind and his survival.
Oh, so people will not be able to survive as well if they don't follow that principle.
Right.
Right. So the purpose is to be able to survive. So when you are confronted with the question of violating the principle on the one hand and not surviving, you are
it seems
when you are confronted. Let me backtrack. When you are confronted with this situation where if you violate the principle, you won't survive, you're not achieving the ultimate end that you said was the reason for the principle. That's a contradiction.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. You just advocated the welfare.
You said that the purpose of the principle is to be able to survive, and now when in a situation you will follow the principle and not survive. So the principle is not fulfilling the purpose that you said it had.
Dan, you just justified the welfare state. You just beautiful.
I didn't even mention
the welfare state. Hold on a sec. You justify the welfare state because
look, I'm not going to engage in this arguing where you say that I didn't even talk about the welfare state.
No, Jan Helfeld say it's okay to steal when you're starving, so it's okay for us to steal also for other people to delegate that right to the politicians when other people are starving. You justify the welfare state.
What's happened is I haven't justified anything. I haven't even talked about the welfare state. It doesn't matter how many times I tell you that I don't believe in the welfare state.
But you've justified it. You said it's okay for you to steal when you're starving. So if it's okay for you to do something, it's okay for you to delegate that right to someone else, and therefore it's okay for you to delegate that right for government to steal. The reason am against the welfare state is because it is
not. Well, it is okay
for you to steal even when you're starving. Therefore, you can't delegate that right to the state. But for you, it's okay. Therefore, you should have no problem delegating that very right to the government.
The people, then they should, if they have no other option, steal. The legal framework should be based on protecting the individual rights of the citizens and not initiating physical force. And when you steal the apple, which is your big deal, you have violated a law, and you are exposed to whatever the criminal penalty is for that law. And luckily, because we have some remnants of the limited government, you have a jury system, and if you went to a jury, they wouldn't do anything to you for stealing the apple when you were starving. But even if they did, they were cold-hearted and they did, that's fine. That's the way the law should be, because the law is based on a situation where there is no extreme duress. So your whole point about what the big deal is, whether what the law says or not, is irrelevant. The point here is an ethical question, which is what you should do. And your problem is you're willing to do things that you think you shouldn't do. So it's irrelevant to hear anything you say about what you should do or not do is irrelevant, because you have admitted that you're willing to do things that you think you shouldn't do. So it doesn't really matter what you think, what your principle is, because you say you're going to violate it. I'm not violating my principle. My principle is grounded, and it's not in contradiction with another end, a higher end, because you just said
the fact that you're not violating your moral principle doesn't mean you're right. If I have a moral principle, it's okay to steal, and I steal, I'm not violating my moral principle.
Absolutely, but you said that the reason why non-initiation of physical force was a good principle was because it permitted you to survive, and now you're telling me that you can't violate even if you don't survive. Don't you see that the way you interpret that principle is violating the end? You say the principle is a means to another end, but guess what? I'm going to follow this principle even though it goes against the end, which is your survival. And so that exposes the logical flaw in your thinking, because you advocate a means to an end, but then when the means destroys the end, you say, okay, let's destroy the end. The whole purpose of the principle was so you could survive and other human beings could survive well as well also. So that's why you need to integrate your ethics, and you need to identify what is your ultimate value.
Jan, if I steal an apple to survive, and I steal it from a guy who that's his only apple and he needs it to survive, well, I'm violating his rights, and that's why these lifeboat situations are not good, because no matter what, someone's rights are going to be violated. That's why no matter what I answer, yes, no, you're going to criticize me for something, because you purposefully painted a situation.
I don't have that quandary. It's not a problem for me. I already explained to you.
Yes, it's not a problem for you, because you basically said it's okay to violate people's rights.
Listen, here's a newsflash for you, Daniel. I don't intentionally violate my principles. Do you know why?
Yes.
Why?
Because they're abstract and nebulous. Because you have the idea that the non-initiation of the it's sort of like taxation, right?
No, you don't know why. You guessed wrong. Guess what? You guessed wrong.
When it goes to things Jan Helfeld doesn't want to pay for, and when it goes to things Jan Helfeld wants to pay for,
you guessed wrong. You just guessed wrong. That's all. I guess you don't understand that you have to integrate your ethics. It's very simple. if I violated my moral principles. I'd be harming myself. I'd be stupid to do it.
But you are violating.
But my moral principles, different from yours, are integrated. So when I follow them, and I know what the context is, and you don't know what the context is, when I follow them, they redone in my benefit and in having a better chance of a happy life. And so but you don't want to say what your ultimate end is. What is your ultimate end?
My ultimate end is to live in a world where people respect other people and don't violate their rights, and when it's convenient, and they say, "Oh, I did it under extreme duress."
Why do you want that?
Why do I want what?
To live in this world where other people respect other people's rights.
Because who wants to live in a world where people don't respect other people's rights?
Why do you want to? I'm asking you.
Because I don't want my rights to be violated, so partially because I'm a selfish prick, and because I have loved ones and I don't want their rights to be violated. I really don't. Look, people who advocate the rights of other people's rights being violated, I could give a shit if their rights are being violated. They deserve it. A lot, not you, because you fight the good fight, and we disagree here, but not you, but hardcore statists like neocons and people who support the war on drugs. When they reap what they sow, I say good. That's what happens when you violate other people's rights. You deserve it. So I have no problem for their rights being violated.
Or you said that you were in favor of that principle because you could survive better.
Right.
Right. If the way you interpret the principle leads you to kill yourself, to die, then it's not helping you.
What does this have to do with government?
And you have to see.
This has nothing to do with government.
Absolutely, it has to do with your ethical underpinning, which you are using to support
the government.
Here's the thing: the
government is institutionalized aggression. The government is a violent gang. The government violates people's rights. Right? Does the government violate?
Governments violate people's rights to more or less degrees in certain governments, and under a limited government, they don't violate anybody's rights. Their purpose is to protect people's rights.
But there's no such thing as limited government.
That's why you have a limited government. That's why a limited government is the ideal political system, and it's based on an idea,
Jan, it's very
on an ethical view that that way everybody has a better chance of having a happy life if they live that way and they organize socially that way, and so that's the reason. So.
Can I speak?
Look, I had some. You wanted to talk about the SNAP principle. I have a lot of questions about it.
Fine. Is it a start? Can I just say something for a second?
Principle, a starting point in ethics.
Can I say something for a sec, please?
Yeah.
Great. Now I just forgot. What were you just saying? It'll help.
I asked you a question. Is the principle that you should not initiate physical force a starting point in ethics?
A goal is not really a starting point in ethics.
Not an axiom that is true under all circumstances?
It's not an action. A long, happy life.
Axiom, not an action. Axiom.
Right.
A principle, a starting
point. The point of moral principles are to tell you what actions do you take. A long, happy life is not an action.
Or not?
Don't violate other people's rights. Violate other people's rights. These are actions.
Is it a starting point in ethics or not, or is it a means to some other end?
The non-aggression principle?
Yeah.
Sure, you could say it's a means to an end to live peaceably with other people.
Okay, so it is a means to an end to live peaceably and to survive and to live well, right?
Sure.
Right. So then it has.
Okay, now I remembered what I was going to say. Jan.
Oh yeah. So there is a purpose. And when implementing the principle defeats the purpose, it means that you're not implementing the principle correctly.
Jan, it's very easy.
You see that or not?
Hold on a sec. You basically are saying, look, I'm advocating limited government, and I'm only advocating government when it's limited. Now it grows, it doesn't stay within its confines. What you're basically doing is saying, look, don't criticize me for advocating the state, because I'm only advocating good states, and when states turn bad, I can say those are not the kind of governments I'm advocating. But you have to make a choice. What would you rather have? A government, and you can't really control the size of it? Maybe it'll be limited, maybe it won't. Or are you going to say, are you on the side of anarchy? Right? How many people,
okay, you want me to answer? It's easy.
How many innocent people does government have to kill before you say, I'm going to take my chances with anarchy? 100 million? 200 million?
No, what you're doing is you're conflating statist governments with a limited government principle with
a limited government which doesn't exist.
Okay, well, you don't want me to answer? It's okay.
I want you to answer. Go ahead.
Well, so I'm humoring you again to answer your questions, since you are conflating, as in every debate that I have with every anarchist, they always do the same thing. They have these statistics about all these people that governments have murdered. Almost all of them, it's not almost 90% of them, were people that were murdered by dictatorships, totalitarian governments, unlimited governments, which I'm not advocating.
Right.
Now, and now, so the limited government that I advocate has provided a great life for your family and mine, and we are enjoying the benefits of that great discovery. And I'm grateful to the founding fathers for have identified the optimum political model, and to the extent that we deviate from it, we suffer, and to the degree that we deviate, we suffer. But guess what? We don't have civil war, we don't have gang warfare, and we can live safe. And all we need is to prevail on foreign policy to stop all these wars that are not defensive wars that we shouldn't be involved in, and get rid of the theory of the neocons have, which is preemption, which is ridiculous. And on the home front, get rid of all redistribution of wealth. And then things would be even better. But let me say that either case, the one that we have now, which is a mixed system, unlimited with limited, in some aspects limited, others not. So even this situation, which is not good, is better than the gang warfare and civil war of anarchism, and that's why nobody wants it. And that's why I respect the right of the people that want it to go ahead and try. But the people that are living in this territory, in this country called the United States, they're not even completely persuaded of limited government. Some are, some aren't.
Yeah.
They are persuaded of that, but they're all persuaded that and clear on the one social construct and agreement that they need a government. And if you disagree at such a root level, well, you don't. There isn't anything that organizes the society. There's no social organization based on any common value. So you don't really have a social organization. You have the state of nature, and the state of nature is and involves in predation, and that's why people don't want it. And I've explained to you how it evolves into predation. Yeah. That's why they won't take it, and that's why they won't go for anarchism, even though other governments mostly, and our governments to some extent, have committed atrocities and killed people.
Yep.
And so that's unfortunate and immoral and wrong.
Yes.
But that doesn't deny the fact that we don't have civil war here, gang warfare, and we live. Guess what, Daniel? Cushy lives, in spite of all that abuse that we are suffering from the government, because it's not limited. So that's why I'm not an anarchist, because it's an easy
anarchist mayhem is anarchists mayhem is conjectural. Government's mayhem is factually horrendous.
Conjectural. I've explained to you how it necessarily leads there.
Yes, because you can predict the future and know what's going to be in the future.
I'll review the premises for you.
Yes, but that doesn't mean
anarchism. There's the amount of different.
Okay, we went through that. I don't want to go through that again.
Okay, well, they're right there, and there are premises that you agree on. Some people will choose to enforce their view. There's a multiplicity of disputes. And if one guy uses force, the other one retaliates. You have a mini gang warfare there, and there's no finality to these wars. Feuds drags in everybody. There's collateral damage. As in your scenario, they have civil war.
Dan,
because
government,
they have all these armies with different leaders and different commands with differences of opinion.
Dan,
ultimately, there's a disagreement, and you have a civil war.
Government has killed. If you take the death, government has killed more people than anyone else on earth.
I'm not responsible or advocating for those totalitarian governments.
I'm not saying you are, but what I am saying is that asking government to protect you from violence when they have murdered more people than anyone else on earth is like asking a rapist.
You don't distinguish
from
between
unwanted sex.
You don't distinguish between a totalitarian dictatorship and the government we have now.
The government we have now is still a
totalitarian dictatorship. You can't see the difference.
85%.
Well, what you need is
85% of the people currently incarcerated are incarcerated for victimless crimes. 95% of those 15%.
You need to experience that in order to see the difference, because I think that's the problem, that you don't see the difference in degree, and you don't see how you're living a cushy life, living very well.
Yes, we're living a cushy life,
but not the
victims of the government, not people who are in jail for
in spite of all these egregious violations,
or for all these other victimless crimes.
Look, I was going to ask you some more questions, but obviously you answer my questions with questions, and you really wanted to have an argument. And I'm sorry that it degenerated into argument.
What are your questions? I will answer.
It says, okay, we've been arguing here for a long time, so you got a chance to ask your questions and do a lot of arguments. So, okay, let's call it a day.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.